Not because you were holding back, not because you didn't know what to say, but because you chose silence. The room wasn't awkward. It wasn't cold. It was full of a kind of quiet electricity, like the air before a thunderstorm. You just looked at him. You let the silence stretch, and he spoke first. That's the mystery of selective silence, the second hidden power. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it with chatter, with filler words, with uh-huhs. And you know what I mean. But when you master the art of intentional stillness, oh, he notices. And he leans in, literally. Watch next time, it's like gravity shifts and he forgets. His phone exists. Men are conditioned to speak, to explain, to solve. So when you don't interrupt, when you don't correct, when you let him work through a story that's going nowhere just because it matters to him, he feels like he matters. It's psychological. Neurologists call it narrative validation. Letting someone tell a story without hijacking it lights up the same. Pleasure centers as being hugged. True story. Researchers once ran an experiment where half the participants were allowed to tell a personal story uninterrupted, and the others were gently redirected mid-sentence. The results? The uninterrupted group reported feeling 42% more emotionally safe, even though the listener said almost nothing. Strange, right? But you've always felt this. That guy who wouldn't stop talking about his camping trip in Colorado. You could have ended it with one raised eyebrow, but instead you listened, you smiled. You stayed silent, and suddenly he was the one chasing you. Selective silence is a subtle flex. It's like texting back after 3 hours, but in real life with your actual presence. And no, we're not talking about playing games or pretending to be mysterious. This isn't about manipulation. It's about choosing which moments deserve your words and which deserve your stillness. Think about this. In music, the most powerful note is sometimes the pause, the beat that doesn't play. That's what gives the melody its soul. Same thing here. You're not withholding to punish, you're listening to feel. You're listening to sense where he's really at beneath the words. And sometimes silence speaks truths that words ruin. Now don't get it twisted. Hello everyone. Today we're diving into something no one really teaches you in school, but every woman has felt it at some point or another. A hidden kind of power. Not the flashy kind that comes with stilettos and red lipstick, though. Let's be honest, those help, but the quiet, magnetic, completely disarming presence you carry without even trying. You know that moment when a guy's scrolling on his phone, pretending he's not listening, but suddenly he puts it down just to look at you? That's the kind of power we're talking about. Emotional presence. And trust me, men crave it more than anything physical. That's right. More than sex. I know. You're thinking, please, men, feelings, but hang tight. It's real. You probably didn't realize it. But your ability to simply be present, to really see someone, hear them, and exist without a constant need to fix, explain, or outperform is basically relationship witchcraft. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'm always curious about my fellow night owls. Now, calm down, turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's begin today's journey of listening and healing. Together, you rewind the tape in your mind. Maybe it was a first date, maybe just a conversation in the kitchen. He looked at you differently. It wasn't your outfit. It wasn't what you said. It was the way you were there. Really there. See, studies have shown that when a person feels truly emotionally seen, the brain releases oxytocin, a a hormone often nicknamed the bonding chemical. It's the same thing that fires up during hugs, during childbirth, even. When your dog looks at you. So when you're sitting across from him, truly engaged, not checking your phone, not zoning out, and you say, "Tell me more," you're literally bonding on a neurological level. Wild, right? But here's where it gets even more interesting. This kind of presence is rare. Especially in today's world of digital noise and curated perfection. And that makes it even more powerful. You're like one of those speakeasies hidden behind a laundromat you don't advertise, but once he's in, he never wants to leave. Emotional presence is not about fixing his childhood trauma over dinner. Please don't. It's not about nodding until your neck cramps up. It's about the tiny, almost invisible ways you show up, the tilt of your head when he speaks, the way your eyes soften when he shares something stupid or painful or both. It's your stillness. Your enough-ness. Most women are taught to be impressive, smart, sexy, ambitious, boss babes. And there's nothing wrong with that. But men, especially emotionally intelligent, slightly bruised, grown-up men don't want to be impressed. They want to be felt. They want to feel like when they're with you, the noise stops. There's a little-known study from the University of Michigan, where participants were asked to rate connection levels during speed dates. The surprising result? The best predictor of emotional connection wasn't attractiveness or how interesting someone was. It was how much they listened, specifically active, engaged listening. One woman in the study said almost nothing, but her date described her as the most present person I've met. He remembered her for weeks. Funny how silence can speak louder than a pickup line. Experts still debate whether this craving for presence is biological or cultural, but one thing's for sure, it's addictive, like .jkt. Okay, but without the brain rot. Once a man has felt that kind of emotional connection, he'll chase it like a caffeine fix he didn't know he was missing. You might say, well, that sounds exhausting. But here's the thing, true presence doesn't require performance. It requires surrender. You don't have to be a therapist or a saint. You just have to be human, soft, awake. So next time you're sitting across from someone, put the phone down. Let them finish their thought. Let your expression say, "You're safe here." Watch how they shift. Watch their voice soften. Watch how they look at you like you're made of something rare. Because you are, presence is power, quiet, unshakable, and believe it or not, it turns out that's the thing men want more than anything they'll ever admit. And remember, no one can replicate your presence. It can't be copied, filtered, or faked. It's not a pose. It's not a TikTok trend. It's you, here now, still, listening. Ready. Let's keep going. You remember that moment. You said nothing. This doesn't mean you sit like a mute swan on a date. You still laugh, respond, engage, but you also choose. You don't rush to fill space just because it feels vulnerable. That pause, that breath between your reactions, that's the part that makes men wonder what's she thinking. And let's be honest, that's hot. Here's a weird little fact you probably haven't heard. In behavioral psychology, there's something called response latency attraction. Basically, the slight delay between when someone finishes talking and when you reply can increase perceived intelligence and romantic interest. It's as if your mind is so deep and thoughtful, it just needs a second longer to process. Wild. I know, experts still argue about whether women naturally wield this better or whether it's a social adaptation. Either way, when you do it right, your silence isn't absence, it's a container. A safe place for them to pour parts of themselves they didn't even know they needed to release. And no, You don't always get thanked for it. But you will get remembered for it, because in a world where everyone's shouting to be heard, the woman who listens really listens. Sometimes without saying a word is unforgettable. So here's a little invitation for you. Next time you feel the urge to jump in, to say something clever, to show you're paying attention, don't just wait. Let your eyes do the listening. Let your eyebrows carry the weight. Let the pause stretch just a second longer than usual. Watch what happens. Selective silence isn't passive. It's an act of emotional generosity. And if you really think about it, what's sexier than someone who gives you the space to be you? Without pressure, without commentary. Nothing. Nothing is sexier than that. Let's keep going. It wasn't the way you walked in. It wasn't your hair, your makeup, or how perfectly your jeans fit that day. It was the way you sat down, like the whole room didn't need to notice you, and yet somehow everyone did. That's the third hidden power, the confidence that doesn't brag. And girl, let's be real, men can smell real confidence like dogs smell bacon. But this isn't the kind of confidence that yells. It's not the look at me energy.
It's
not loud, and it's definitely not thirsty. This kind of confidence is unbothered, relaxed. The kind that says, I could explain myself, but I'd rather finish my drink. You walk into a room and your energy says, I'm not here to audition. And just like that, his head turns. His brain doesn't even know why. But his body leans forward like it's hearing a song only you're playing. Here's something weird. In a study on romantic attraction, participants were asked to rank traits they found most desirable. Confidence topped the list, but not the boastful kind. They described it as authentic self-possession. In plain English, someone who's good with themselves, even when no one's watching. And the best part? You don't have to feel confident 24/7 to carry this energy. You just have to act like your attention is a limited edition perfume and you're stingy about spraying it. Now, let me tell you what doesn't count as real confidence. Posting 46 selfies with inspirational captions and fake deep quotes. Name dropping. Achievements like you're reading your own resume aloud, correcting people mid-sentence just to feel smarter. Nah, that's all noise. Real confidence is when you let someone else shine and you don't feel dimmed. When you let a compliment land without immediately self-deprecating. When you say, thank you, instead of, ooh, no, I look tired. You remember that one date you didn't try hard at all. You didn't pretend to like his weird music taste. Or laugh at that joke about crypto. You just were. And guess what? That's when he called you back. That's when he said, there's just something about you. The something is this. Your quiet confidence makes you unpredictable. See, men are used to chasing validation, especially in today's hookup culture. So when you show up like, hey, it's cool if this doesn't work out. I like myself either way. They're left disarmed, bewildered, turned on. Because you're not trying to win, they are. And they should. Fun fact, there's a psychological effect called the pratfall effect. It suggests that highly competent people become more attractive when they don't try to be perfect. A little stumble, a small imperfection combined with calm self-assurance actually draws people in. Because now you're not intimidating. You're magnetic. Experts still debate whether this effect works the same on men and women. But here's what's clear. When you're okay with being seen flaws and all you give others permission to drop their guard, that emotional nakedness, way more intimate than taking your clothes off. But here's the twist. If you start using low-key confidence as a strategy, it stops being real. You can't fake not trying. You either relax into who you are or you don't. And the more you try to seem chill, the more chaotic your energy becomes. So, what do you do instead? You breathe slower. You speak slower. You let silence sit longer than what's comfortable. You stop rushing to fill in awkward pauses or over-explaining your boundaries. You say, "This is what works for me," and leave it there. You make peace with the idea that not everyone will like you and that maybe, just maybe, that's the whole point. Because when you carry yourself like someone who doesn't need to impress, men stop wondering if they're good enough for you and start asking themselves if they're ready for a woman who's already whole. And listen, confidence isn't a volume knob. It's a frequency. It's not something you turn up to be noticed. It's something you tune into low, steady, vibrating under everything you do. And when you do, they don't just want to be near you. They want to match your energy. They want to earn the right to stay in your space. And that's the kind of desire that doesn't fade after sex. That's the kind that lingers. So next time you walk into a room, don't walk like you own it. Walk like you don't need to. That's real power. You're at the diner. Not some fancy curated brunch spot with overpriced lattes. Just a regular booth with cracked vinyl seats and too much neon. He's across from you, sipping black coffee like it's going to reveal some secret. And you ask the question? No one asks anymore. What made you the way you are? He pauses. You see the flicker. Like you just turned a doorknob he didn't know was loose. That's the fourth hidden power, emotional curiosity. And let me be clear, not nosiness. You're not trying to crack him open like a mystery novel. You're just genuinely curious about what shaped him. That's rare. That's sacred. And to a man who's spent years being misunderstood, rushed, or only loved for his usefulness, it's electric. We live in a world obsessed with answers, not questions. We swipe through bios, read quick takes, make instant assumptions. But when you ask something deeper, when you linger on it, it does something to his nervous system. It says, you're worth knowing, not just using, not just labeling. There's actually a psychological phenomenon behind this. It's called deep disclosure intimacy. When someone feels emotionally safe enough to reveal something personal, the brain releases dopamine, not just for the speaker, but the listener too. It's like a trust handshake inside your skull. But here's the twist. Most people interrupt deep disclosure before it even starts. You know why? Because emotional curiosity requires stillness. It requires comfort with discomfort. And it requires something most people avoid, like a bad haircut, empathy without control. You don't ask him about his past just to analyze it. You don't offer a 5-step plan to fix his relationship with his dad. You don't diagnose him like a TikTok therapist. You just listen. And you ask the kind of follow-ups that show you actually heard him. And that, my dear, hits harder than any outfit you'll ever wear, because while everyone else is playing emotional checkers, you're playing chess, quietly, kindly, curiously. You probably don't even realize it, but your questions are your fingerprints. That time you asked him what his favorite Saturday looked like as a kid. He's never been asked that. And when he answered, he remembered the way his mom made pancakes shaped like letters, and for a second, he was there. You time-traveled him. With a question. Now most women are taught to answer well, to be articulate, to sound impressive. But few are taught how to ask the kind of questions that aren't fishing for attention or trying to impress with, "I'm so deep," energy. Just the kind that come from pure, clean-hearted interest. And when you do that, when you ask without agenda, something unlocks. Not just in him, in you too. You stop needing to be dazzling. You stop needing to be perfect. Because your presence is now a soft landing, a mirror, a refuge. And here's a fun, strange fact. In evolutionary psychology, It's believed that emotional curiosity may have developed as a survival mechanism. The more you understand someone's inner world, the more likely you are to protect them and be protected in return. Experts still debate whether this holds true in modern relationships. But the point stands, men are drawn to the rare woman who's more interested in their why than their what. The one who listens for subtext. The one who asks, "Did you ever tell anyone that before?" and means it. Let's be real, some of them won't know what to do with that kind of attention. They'll squirm, joke, change the subject, and that's okay. Because the point isn't to pry, it's to invite. And your calm, steady interest is the invitation most men never get. So next time you sit across from someone, try it. Don't ask what they do. Ask what they love about what they do. Ask what they daydream about. Ask what they were like before the world told them to man up. Then sit back, let the silence stretch a little, and watch what blooms, because emotional curiosity isn't a game. It's a door, and you, darling, hold the key. You're in your kitchen. It's 11:42 p.m. The light above the sink hums faintly while the kettle whistles just enough to remind you it's still alive. You're wearing that old hoodie with the sleeves too long. And then you remember the way you laughed earlier that day. Full belly, eyes closed. Didn't care who heard you kind of laugh. That's the fifth hidden power. Unfiltered joy. It's shockingly rare. See. Most women, maybe even you, have been taught that joy needs a reason. That it should be contained, polished, Instagram ready. That it must follow some kind of achievement, or be earned with hard work, or, God forbid, not take up too much space. But then you show up, laughing at that stupid cat video like it's the first time you've ever seen a creature fall off a windowsill, dancing while brushing your teeth, smiling to yourself because the sky looked a little too dramatic to be casual. And he sees you, not the version of you that's curated for approval, but the part that's free, spontaneous, lit from the inside out. That joy, that's a flame. And for a man who's spent most of his life grinding, proving, striving, your joy is a portal back to something he forgot he even wanted. Ease. Neurologically, this makes perfect sense. Studies show that witnessing authentic positive emotion like spontaneous laughter or wonder triggers mirror neurons in the brain, meaning he actually feels what you feel without even trying. Joy is contagious, but only when it's real. Here's the kicker. We're so used to performative happiness, the "I'm so blessed" kind of fake cheerful posts, that when someone shows up actually happy for no social reward, it feels revolutionary. That time you hummed your favorite song in line at the grocery store? He was behind you, he didn't say anything. But his heart opened like an old door. Not because you were perfect, but because you were present, and you didn't need him to be the source of that joy. That's the secret. When your joy isn't about him, it becomes magnetic to him, because it's not a transaction. It's not conditional. You're not saying, "Make me happy and I'll give you love." You're saying, "I already have love. Come join if you want." Experts still argue about whether joy is a fixed trait or a practiced skill. But most agree that people with higher emotional resilience tend to radiate joy even during small, unremarkable moments. And here's the strange, underrated truth. Nothing draws a man in more than a woman who can find magic in the mundane. You notice how your coffee cup feels warm in your hands, how the air smells before it rains, how your best friend always says, literally when she means figuratively. And instead of scrolling past these things, you delight in them. That delight, that's your currency. Don't underestimate it. In a world that teaches women to be sexy, impressive, successful, and everything except delighted, your unfiltered joy is quietly radical. It's the thing men remember when they're sitting in traffic thinking, why do I miss her smile more than her body? Because your joy wasn't performative. It was personal. It was yours, and joy like that. It doesn't beg. It doesn't compete. It doesn't need to be louder than anyone else's. It just is. And in being so unapologetically itself, it becomes the most seductive thing in the room. So don't dim it. Don't second guess your happiness because someone else doesn't know what to do with it. Don't shrink your giggles, your goofy dance moves, or that ridiculous snort you make when something's really funny, because the woman who owns her joy doesn't just attract attention. She restores people. She reminds them that life doesn't have to be earned in blood and exhaustion. She teaches them that maybe, just maybe, peace is possible. And when he sees that, he doesn't just want to kiss you. He wants to laugh with you at midnight for the rest of his life. You're on your couch, phone face down. The episode you were watching has been paused for 12 minutes, but you haven't moved. Your thoughts are somewhere else looping, second-guessing. Did you say too much? Was it weird to tell him about that memory? Should you have texted something lighter? Then you don't reach for the phone. You don't send the follow-up text. You breathe. You lean back. You trust that silence won't kill you. That, right there, is the sixth hidden power, emotional patience and honey. It's rarer than a quiet toddler on a plane. See, most people have emotional reactivity. Something uncomfortable happens, they sprint to fix it, fill it, flee it. But you're learning to sit inside the silence without clawing your way out. And in a world built for speed, that slowness is when a man encounters a woman who doesn't rush to resolve discomfort, who doesn't chase every awkward pause with reassurance. He feels something he doesn't even have a name for: respect. Not just for him, but for herself. Because it takes serious self-worth to let things unfold without panicking. Here's the funny part. He might not recognize it at first. In fact, he might mistake your calm for disinterest. Why aren't you freaking out? Why aren't you triple texting? Why aren't you trying to decode his half-baked "sorry, I've been busy" message? Because you don't do that anymore. You've learned the art of holding space for him, for you, for the mystery in between. And science backs this up. In a recent study on emotional regulation, researchers found that individuals who practiced response delay had stronger long-term connection outcomes. In other words, the ones who didn't react instantly had better relationships. But here's the kicker. Emotional patience isn't about detachment. It's not cool girl energy. It's not pretending you don't care. It's not playing aloof to gain leverage. It's care with boundaries. It's affection with breathing room. You remember that night he went quiet for hours? And you didn't spiral? You just cooked dinner, watered your plants, watched half a documentary about volcanoes, and by the time he texted, you didn't even feel tight in your chest. That's progress. That's power. And it shocks men. Especially the ones used to women who mistake intensity for intimacy. The ones who think love has to look like anxiety in a cute outfit. When you don't respond from panic, when you wait, observe, let things reveal themselves, you become something else entirely. You become an emotional anchor. Now, don't get it twisted. Emotional patience doesn't mean tolerating nonsense. It doesn't mean waiting forever for someone to figure themselves out while you rot in the corner. It means you observe before you absorb. You notice before you react. It's that moment when you think, that didn't sit right, instead of, I need to fix this now or he'll leave. And the beauty of that is, it resets the game. Suddenly, you're not the one performing emotional CPR on a half-dead connection. You're the one letting things rise or fall on their own merit. There's actually a lesser-known psychological term called distress tolerance. It refers to your ability to feel hard things without flipping out. The higher your distress tolerance, the calmer your emotional waters stay even when someone else is throwing rocks into them. Experts are still debating how much of this trait is innate versus learned, but what they do agree on is this: emotional patience creates space for truth to emerge. It slows down reactive cycles. It invites clarity where chaos used to live. And that clarity, that's where real connection begins. Because here's the secret most people miss: the person who can hold the pause holds the power. So next time you feel the itch to explain, to clarify, to check in, just in case, pause, put your phone down. Look around your life, return to yourself. Let the silence stretch like yoga for your nervous system, because if he's worth it, he'll lean in, and if he's not, he'll fade out and leave behind space for something truer. Either way, you didn't chase, you trusted. And that trust in yourself, that's the sexiest thing in the room. It's Sunday morning. You're in his hoodie again, slightly stretched out at the sleeves, smells faintly like detergent and memory. You're barefoot on the porch, sipping coffee that's a little too hot. And you're staring at nothing in particular, just being you. Don't say much. You don't feel the need to. That's the seventh hidden power. Peace without performance. Let's talk about that. Because we live in a world where women are trained to entertain, to sparkle, to have a clever comeback, a flirty smile, a curated playlist of opinions and jokes, and cool girl takes ready at all times. But when you show up without the act, when you are simply calm, without needing to dazzle, he feels it in his bones. A quiet like that, it's not just refreshing, it's revolutionary, because most men don't even know how much noise they carry until they're near a woman who doesn't add to it, a woman whose presence says, "You don't need to impress me. You don't need to protect me from your silence. You don't need to keep the conversation running like a treadmill." That's when he exhales, not because he's bored, but because he's safe. There's actually a biological explanation for this. According to neuroscience, when we're in the presence of someone grounded and emotionally regulated, our own nervous systems begin to co-regulate. It's called limbic resonance, our brains syncing in calm. Think of it like Bluetooth for your emotions. Now, here's the twist. People often mistake this kind of peace for passivity. But this isn't about being low energy or not having opinions. You're not playing small. You're just not performing. You're confident enough to let the silence breathe. You don't jump in with filler talk every 10 seconds. You're not trying to sell yourself like a product on a shelf. You're just there, sipping your coffee, watching the clouds, existing like it's enough. And guess what? It is enough. Because peace like yours isn't common. Most people walk around like shaken soda cans, ready to explode or fizz out, depending on the day. But you've learned how to hold your stillness like it's sacred, like it's a form of generosity. And it is. You remember the first time he stayed over? When you didn't fill the morning with nervous chatter? When you made eggs quietly and handed him coffee without some performative joke? He watched you move through your space, like you belonged in your own life. Like you weren't trying to win him. He probably didn't say it out loud. But in that moment, he trusted you more. Because peace doesn't posture. It doesn't force connection. It creates space for it to happen naturally. And here's the wild part. Studies show that people who maintain a baseline of emotional calm are not only more attractive long-term, but also experience stronger intimacy over time. Experts still debate whether this is a temperament trait or a learned skill. But what they agree on is this: peace is magnetic when it's real. You've met women like this before, haven't you? The ones who don't need to dominate the room, who don't chase attention, who say fewer words but every word lands with more weight. They feel like warm light through the blinds on a quiet morning. And everyone wants to sit in that sun. Even if they can't explain why, you're becoming that woman, not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you've stopped needing external validation to feel alive. You've made friends with your own quiet, and in that stillness, men see something rare. If she doesn't need me to fill the silence, maybe she actually wants me here. That's the difference, Dot. So next time you feel the pressure to sparkle, to say something witty, to turn yourself into a walking highlight reel, pause. Let yourself be ordinary. Let the silence stretch. Let the moment exist without dressing it up, Dot, because the woman who can sit in silence often hears the most honest things. You're sitting in traffic, late again. Your playlist just looped back to that song you used to love but now kind of hate. You glance at the car next to you, some guy eating yogurt with way too much concentration. And then back to your own reflection in the mirror. You smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you suddenly remember. You don't need perfect to feel powerful. That's the 8th hidden power. Grace under mess.c. It's one thing to be graceful when life is polished. When your schedule's clear, your hair's cooperating. Your plans go exactly as they should. But real grace? The kind that turns heads and softens hearts? That shows up when things are off kilter. You know, the kind of day, you burn your toast, spill coffee on your shirt, show up to the Zoom meeting with yesterday's eyeliner doing its own walk of shame. And still somehow you laugh, you shrug. You say, well, this is aggressively Tuesday. You carry on, Dot, and he sees that. Not the chaos, but your capacity inside it, because grace under mess isn't about looking calm. It's about being real without collapsing. And that's magnetic in a way few people realize. Why? Because most men live under a silent, suffocating pressure to fix things, to manage outcomes, to never let things fall apart. But when he sees a woman who can handle imperfection without imploding, he doesn't feel judged. He feels invited. Invited to be human. Invited to exhale. Invited to trust that not every mistake requires a disaster recovery plan. Here's the science. Part. Psychological flexibility, the ability to stay present and adaptive during difficult situations, is now considered one of the strongest predictors of emotional health. Not how perfectly you handle things, but how willing you are to stay with them, mess and all. Most people flee that discomfort. But you've started collecting the imperfect moments like souvenirs. That time you accidentally called your boss babe. That time you showed up to a date in 2 different earrings. That time you cried in front of someone and didn't apologize for it. Afterward, each of those was a tiny revolution. Each one said, I can be seen in my mess and still be worthy of love. And here's the plot twist. Men are often attracted to beauty, intelligence, humor, but they fall in love with grace, not the polite kind, the gritty, resilient kind. The kind that says, I can hold both joy and disaster in the same breath and still make room for you. Experts still debate whether this kind of grace is teachable or innate. But one thing's for sure, it doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from letting go. It's the power of knowing that a cracked moment doesn't mean a broken life. Next time life throws you curveballs, don't panic. Don't scramble to make it look prettier. Let it be awkward. Let it be a little ugly. And walk through it anyway, because when he sees you navigate life's hiccups without losing your softness, He doesn't just admire you, he trusts you, with his truth, with his flaws, with the parts of himself he's spent years hiding from the world. And in that trust, you become more than attractive. You become essential. So, if you're in the middle of a messy emotional, logistical, or just existential, take a breath. Own it. Grace it. Keep going because perfection is impressive. But grace under fire? That's unforgettable. You're walking through the grocery store aisle 7, the one with sauces and sadness. Your cart has 2 avocados, almond milk, and a weird craving for cinnamon you can't explain. Then you see it, that woman in front of you, sharp blazer, no list, moving like she's running a company and not just picking out spaghetti sauce, and something in you clicks. I know that feeling. Because the 9th hidden power is this, being decisively yourself. No disclaimers. No apologizing for your preferences. No, sorry, I'm so picky when you send the dish back. No, I hope this isn't weird. Before you share what you actually want in a relationship, you finally realized owning your wants isn't selfish, it's magnetic. You see, we're trained to soften our edges, to make things easier for everyone else, to be agreeable, accommodating, low maintenance. What does that even mean anyway? A relationship isn't a houseplant, but then something shifts. One day, you stop choosing the movie you think he'll like. You order the dish you actually want. You speak up not louder, but clearer, and then notice, because decisiveness in a woman isn't threatening, it's clarifying. It tells them, here's what I value, here's what I need, here's what I won't pretend about. It's a relief. It removes the guessing game. And while some men may not be ready for that kind of clarity, the right ones, they lean in closer. There's even a psychological principle behind this, decision fatigue. It's real. The more choices people have to make, the more depleted they become. So when you walk through the world with a clear sense of who you are, your yeses and your hard no's, you reduce that emotional clutter, you become an oasis. In a world full of maybe, you remember that moment when he asked if you wanted something casual, and you didn't dodge. You didn't say, I don't know, maybe? You said, that's not what I'm looking for. And it didn't collapse. The moment. It clarified it. Some women think decisiveness is masculine energy, that it pushes men away, but in reality, it pulls the right men forward. It shows them who you are and saves you both the agony of trying to decode mixed signals later. And let's be honest, life is complicated enough without pretending you like hiking when you hate bugs, or agreeing to a 10 p.m. date when you're more of a 9:30 p.m. bedtime with a face mask kind of woman. Your clarity is a kindness. It's how you build trust before you build intimacy. It's how you build intimacy without losing yourself. And that's a superpower most people don't even realize they're allowed to have. Experts argue over how decisiveness impacts attraction long term. Some believe it adds tension. Others say it increases compatibility. But what's clear? Authenticity is addictive when paired with kindness. So next time someone asks what you want, don't default to, I'm easy. Don't say whatever's fine. Say what's true, even if it feels awkward. Even if it's met with silence, because every time you do, you reinforce the truth. You are not a mirror for someone else's desires. You are a map of your own, and that map, that's what men will follow, if they're brave enough. So keep showing up with preferences, with opinions, with firm lines and soft laughter. You are not too much. You're just no longer folding to fit the space. And that, my friend, is power in its purest, most feminine form. You're lying on the couch, lights dim, phone face down. There's a silence hanging in the air, not heavy, just honest.
And in
That quiet, you hear it, not from him. From you, a deep, quiet knowing. You don't need to be needed to feel worthy. That's the 10th and final. Hidden power. Emotional sovereignty. It's a phrase you maybe haven't used before, but you've felt it. It's when your mood doesn't ride the roller coaster of someone else's approval, when you don't text just to feel reassured, when you don't wait 3 hours for a reply and spiral, when you can feel the ache of missing someone but still choose not to chase them. It's when your heart learns how to hold itself. See, we're taught that connection means merging, that love means half of me is you. But here's the truth you've started living. Real intimacy doesn't blur the lines. It honors them. And that's the twist that most people miss. The most irresistible women aren't the ones who give everything. They're the ones who know what not to give away. You've been her before, the fixer, the healer, the one who swallows your own needs so no one else feels uncomfortable. You thought love meant constantly adjusting yourself, editing your feelings, softening your truths to keep things safe. But now, you've started protecting your inner world like it's sacred, not with walls, but with boundaries. And then, the good ones? They feel that because emotional sovereignty doesn't scream, I don't need anyone. It whispers, I know how to need from a place of strength, not scarcity. And that's what makes you magnetic. You remember that day you didn't reply right away? Not out of strategy, but because you were in the middle of your life, grocery shopping, talking to your sister, sitting in the bathtub rereading a book you already knew the ending to.
he texted again. Everything okay?
And you smiled because, yes, it was, you weren't proving anything. You weren't playing games. You were just living. And that's the power of a woman who no longer bends her time, her voice, or her rhythm around someone else's attention. It's rooted. It's rare. It's not lonely, it's luminous. There's even a fascinating study debated among experts that suggests people who maintain individual emotional baselines within relationships tend to experience deeper intimacy over time. Because they're not reacting out of fear. They're relating out of choice. That's you now. You don't perform to keep anyone interested. You don't abandon your peace to make someone else comfortable. You don't mistake anxiety for chemistry. You know what love feels like, and more importantly, you know what it doesn't feel like anymore, and that knowledge. That's power. So tonight when you turn off your light, and you're not waiting for a text, or reading into emojis, or building a fantasy around breadcrumbs. You're just there whole, warm, with yourself. You'll realize something. This journey, the one we've taken together through all 10 powers, it's not just about what men find irresistible. It's about who you become when you stop giving your power away, and in that space. You don't just attract love. You attract the right kind of love. The kind that sees you. The kind that doesn't ask you to shrink. The kind that's worthy of you. So exhale, gently. You've remembered what you always knew deep down. You were never missing anything. You were just waiting to come back to yourself. Now let's let the lights dim a little lower. Let the words soften at the edges. Let the fan hum in the background like a lullaby. It's time to rest. You're safe here. You're strong here. And you don't have to carry it all tonight.